The first thing that we need to do, whether we're buying or selling, is we need to gather information about the other party. We need to know what their hot buttons are. We need to figure out what's most important to them. So as an example, for our listings, and this is something that we've been doing for years now that has been hugely impactful in our business and in the quality of life of our clients. When people schedule a showing on our properties, we pre-qualify those showings. We need to make sure that if a buyer is going to walk through my listing and I'm effectively kicking my client out of their house for an hour and also requiring of them to, make it look nice and open up the blinds and turn on lights and so on and so forth, I want that time to be worth it for them. There's nothing worse than going through this process of preparing your home to be viewed, especially when you've got a lot going on at home. I mean, even especially right now, if you're at home and working from home, there's nothing worse than doing all of this to find out that the buyer is just not a buyer. They are not ready to buy a house. They're essentially using your house as research to determine whether they even want to buy, whether this is the right place for them to buy. And of course, we've got some buyers that say, hey, we're thinking of Charleston, we're thinking of Myrtle Beach, we're thinking of Hilton Head, blah, blah, blah. We need to gain a better understanding of the properties in these different locations so that we can make up our mind. And that's fair. In those instances, that's fine so long as if they find the right property, are they in a position to make an offer? So as an example, we'll cancel a showing if somebody says, well, we're thinking of moving to Charleston, but we're retiring at the end of next year. And then, at that point in time, we'd need to sell our house in order to buy another. And so now we just need to kind of get an idea of, are we on track? Is this something that we want to do a year, 2 years from now? And I think in those instances, it's respectful of the agent to let the listing agent know that, hey, this is the scenario. This is what their plans are. But agents don't volunteer that information. It's just one more step that they don't have to take. So why take it? Why waste the time? That's just how agents do things. So for us, we want to make sure that we're safeguarding our clients' time and frankly, our time too. We don't want to waste a bunch of time on folks that are just a waste of time. And I hate to put it that bluntly, but let's just be honest. That's what a lot of these showings are. It's just a waste of time. It's not a waste of time for the person that's doing research, but you just need to make the decision as a seller as to whether that's something that you want to allow to happen or not. Do you have 2 hours to burn preparing your home for sale or preparing your home to be viewed and then go and drive around for an hour? If you got some errands to run and you don't mind, then so be it. But we at least want to ask the question. So if they walk through the house and they like what they see, are they in a position to make an offer? Are they paying cash or are they pre-approved? Let me tell you a few things about this property that we think you'll be interested in. And just out of curiosity, what was it about this house you guys were interested in? We start asking these questions of the buyer agent, and you would be surprised at the amount of information they will leak to us. They'll start saying things that, a good real estate agent would not say to the agent representing the other party because that information could be held against them in the form of negotiation. But again, as a listing agent, somebody that represents a seller, we're not going to get that information if we don't ask for it. Just like on, the buyer side, if we're representing a buyer, if we're not asking the right questions the right way, then we're entering into a negotiation fairly blind. We don't know how motivated they are to sell. We don't know, what their ideal time frame would be. And so when you're negotiating a deal, you need to identify all of these, different categories of things that are important to both the buyer and the seller so that you can find that point in time where there's some satisfaction on both ends in those different categories. Maybe they would be open to selling the property for a little bit less money if fill in the blank. Or as a seller, hey, if I'm going to agree to those terms, if I have to move out quickly to accommodate the fact that you have to be moved into this house in the next 30 days, then this is the deal that I want to inherit the risk of then accelerating my own plans to go and find another property, which is going to require, putting a down payment down for my moving truck sooner than I'd anticipated. Maybe putting a down payment down for a place to rent while I look for another property to buy to make that transition a little more smooth. There are all these different things that can occur throughout the course of the negotiation of a contract, and a skilled negotiator is going to identify those areas rather than just say, okay, well, I know you like this house. They're asking, $350 for it. And, I'd say, why don't we just try offering $340? Like sometimes the only tactic is, hey, let's just try and offer them a little less and see if they'll take it. I'm here to tell you that there are things that are more important to both a buyer and a seller than just the buy price or the sales price. There are closing costs that could be incorporated. Maybe you want some stuff inside the house. Maybe you want the seller to do certain things to the house. Maybe you want to negotiate repair credits. Maybe, there are all these different things, all these different turns that this conversation can take. You need to identify what those things are that are important to both parties so that you can get what you want. Now, I will say this. We're in a low inventory environment. I've been saying this on this show, but also for years. So sometimes the way that you win as a buyer is just by getting the house in a multiple offer situation. So sometimes you need to ask yourself, what am I willing to concede on in order to get the house of my dreams? In other words, at what point in time am I going to say no to this opportunity? How much is too much for me to give away in order for me to know that this is just not the right deal for me? I will wait for something else. Those conversations need to be had with your real estate agent so that we can determine whether or not those expectations are reasonable based on current market dynamics and based on our own experience. So as a buyer, if your expectation is that no matter what you buy, you're going to get 15% off, I'm just here to tell you that in some markets, that's going to be incredibly, incredibly challenging. In other markets, it might be just fine. But is it 15% off of the asking price? Is it 15% off of what the property is actually worth? Are we incorporating closing costs into that calculate? So the point I'm making is this. When you're going to negotiate a deal, first and foremost, you need to have a real estate agent that's skilled in negotiating. You need to identify certain pieces of information that are important to both parties so that you ultimately get what you want, or find a middle ground on some things that are maybe less important to you so that you can win in the other areas of the negotiation that are more important to you. They always say that the best negotiation is when both parties are just a little unhappy with the deal. That's kind of the definition of a 50-50 win-win situation, when both parties are just a little unhappy with it, but will agree to it. That means the buyer's gotten some things that they want, the seller's gotten some things they want. But of course, our goal is to get you everything you want, but then identify the things that you're willing to concede on to still make the deal work and to still have it tip in your favor. So we've got some great articles and some great things that we've put together on our team as it relates to negotiating. If that's something that you'd like, some information on, if you're in an industry where negotiating is important and a function of what you do, I'm happy to share some of those resources with you. But either way, when you hire a real estate agent, that should be a conversation that is had is, tell me about the negotiations that are occurring in this market right now. What's reasonable to expect? If I'm selling my house, how many people are going to be asking me to pay their closing costs? As an example, is that something we should be using as a marketing strategy to attract people if we know that the majority of them are going to ask us to pay their closing costs anyways? A lot of different avenues you can take here. Hope this was helpful. We're going to take one more break and come back for a few more minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, learn more about our real estate team and how we help folks win in their transaction, feel free to give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009, or go to listingsincharleston.com. Listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.